It's 5:30, so let's call to order this meeting for Monday, May 19th. Jordan, would you start us off? The roll call, please.
Please respond by stating present. Councilmember Ronayne.
Present.
Faubourg.
Present.
Liebelt.
Present.
Ward.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Langer.
Present.
Norvstrup.
Present.
Mayor Shoneman.
Present. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business will be to approve this week's meeting agenda. I had a couple of late additions, but nothing that requires any kind of an amendment to what was submitted and circulated. So I'd take a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Ward, second Knobstrup. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next is approval of the minutes for the meeting which occurred 2 weeks ago on May 5th. I would take a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion Liebelt, second Ward. Anyone have anything needs to be addressed on any of those? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. When I rolled in, no one had signed up to speak to the open forum, so we'll move along to our consent calendar, where we'll start with a proclamation. It's National Public Service Week here, and given our focus on public service, I thought I would go ahead and read this proclamation. Official to the City of Aberdeen, South Dakota, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to the sustainable and resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being to the people of Aberdeen. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Aberdeen to gain a knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore, I, Travis Shoneman, Mayor of the City of Aberdeen, do hereby proclaim May 18th through the 24th as Public Service Works Week. I urge fellow citizens to join with representation of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make for protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life. So thank you to the folks in the City of Aberdeen that make all this kind of stuff possible, all of our public works employees. Definitely a lot easier going with you guys doing the hard work. Additionally, we've got 6 additional items for consent calendar. We've got a lottery notice, an event permit, a whole slug of renewals for on-off sale malt beverage and farm wine license, a new sidewalk contractor, a new taxi cab driver license, as well as a publication of the First Amendment to find no significant impact for the water reclamation facility improvement project. So I would take a motion to approve any and all of these consent calendar items.
Second.
We've got a motion from Councilman Knobstrup, second Councilwoman Faubourg. Anyone have anything on any of these consent calendar items before we take our vote? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion does carry. We've got 2 items of old business here tonight. They are both ordinances that we had discussed to some length 2 weeks ago when they were brought before us. The first is a possible reading and final adoption ordinance titled 250503, that will repeal the parking board and expand the purpose of the Downtown Business Improvement District. As we discussed, the parking board had essentially not been meeting any which way, and this was a practical way to make sure that the city's parking lots were being attended to, and that the ordinance reflected the way that we ought to be doing things down there. Ken, any input or anything happen in the meantime? I guess you might not.
changes.
Okay. Sounds good. Robin, Ron, anything to add to this second reading here?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so if someone from the council was so inclined, they could take a motion for the second reading and final adoption of this ordinance.
I'll move to approve it.
Second.
Did you say second there, Tiffany? All right. Sounds good. I've got a motion from Councilman Johnson, second from Councilwoman Langer. Anyone from the council have any final thoughts on this one? Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote then, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion carries. Second item of old business is an associated ordinance. This is a second reading and final adoption of ordinance 250504, which amends public parking regulations. There's quite a bit more going on with this one, but in summary, it's primarily our police department and a lieutenant there taking over a lot of the responsibilities of the day-to-day activities and oversight as we transition into full city control. Ron, anything new on this one?
Mr. Mayor, I will note that in the new proposed 52-217 sub D, we did make the change requested by the council at first reading, and that is now in the ordinance for second reading.
Sounds good. And that was for appeals to people who had been denied in terms of closing down streets for their activities and so forth. Anything else? All right, I take a motion.
So moved. Move to approve.
Got a motion from Councilman Ward and a second from Councilman Northrup. Any further discussion on the second reading of this ordinance? Jordan?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion carries. That sums up the old business that we're here to discuss today. We've got quite a number of items in our new business. We'll start with a possible approval of a boundary line highway agreement with the county. This has been certainly a long time coming, and excited to see it finally having some legs and nearing the finish line on this. Ron, would you walk us through a little bit about what the agreement actually contains?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A boundary line highway is a county highway that also acts as a city limits boundary line due to the annexation of properties nearby. The proposed agreement between the city of Aberdeen and Brown County follows the 2024 adoption of a statute that required that the charge of a boundary line highway, that is, the responsibility to care for and regulate the road, must be assigned to one of the respective jurisdictions as agreed upon between them. The proposed agreement establishes a framework for assigning charge of a shared highway and allocating the costs of caring for the road. Where a contribution of half of the cost to maintain and reconstruct is required, the agreement utilizes the county's annual per mile road maintenance or reconstruction costs to determine the amount owed. So for clarification, what that means is that creating a city street is much more expensive than creating a county highway. What this proposes to do is only use the county's cost to determine what contribution needs to be made. County officials and city staff recommend approval of the intergovernmental agreement. I have attached as part of the council agenda memo a copy of the statute, and it's my understanding we may be the first, Brown County and the city of Aberdeen may be the first jurisdictions in the state to actually enter into an agreement like this. But we have had this out there with the county for a while, and County Highway Superintendent Dirk Rogers has provided us with a project cost record journal showing how he calculates annually, how he determines the cost to either maintain or reconstruct a road. And that's what we'll be using as our formula, our guide to determining those costs when we make those allocations. You'll also note in the agreement itself, just to try to address any confusion that there might be, we actually put an example of how that assignment would be working on page 2 of the agreement. So with that, we recommend approval. I understand the county will be taking this up tomorrow morning, and that the commissioners will hopefully be approving it as well.
So Ron, North Dakota Street has obviously been kind of an area of focus that's been a county roadway. It's one that the city has annexed property on either side in portions of that roadway, so that's obviously been a high focus. Are there other streets that will immediately be impacted by this agreement?
I don't know.
Well, not by this agreement, but what we're using this for also will be as a way to work with the townships. And so the same situation exists, and we do have the one out at Westlake that would be likely to transition into that. Once we get this agreement taken care of, then we would go forward with the townships and try to start forging that relationship as well and transitioning some of those roads into city jurisdiction.
And then in terms of a full annexation of the roadway, does this speak to at which point that tipping point turns?
Correct, yep. Actually, we've got it established that if a full annexation were to occur, anything over 75%, frankly, annexed property on that segment, that half-mile segment, then that would become 100% responsibility of the city.
And in terms of a practical application with the North Dakota Street example, that's one that a lot of residents have been very concerned about, of course, in terms of an immediate short-term repair. It's obviously going to be in our budget to overhaul the street in its entirety in the next few years, but for the time being, the city will take on the activity of patching.
Stu did have our crews go out there last week, I believe the beginning of last week. So about a week ago, we took care of that initially just to get it passable, and I would assume that we'll be doing more as the year goes on.
Yeah, as problems develop out there, we'll make sure we take care of it.
And those are pothole fills and with
Correct.
an overlay in the general area, or simply just filling them?
I think based on the fact that our plan is to reconstruct it next construction season, that we'll try to probably get by with the minimum possible this year. I mean, the less money we invest in it, probably the better, knowing that we're going to completely reconstruct it next year. So I'm thinking probably at this point, unless things get so bad that we need to do an overlay, but I would anticipate we'd just be doing patching as it's needed.
Thank you, Stu. Appreciate that clarification. I still haven't gotten a motion or a second, so I would go ahead and request one of those from the council.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion, Councilman Langer, second, Councilman Ward. Any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor. Oh,
We'll start with Councilman Ward, actually, since I heard your voice a little bit first. What have you got?
Yeah, just curious if either you or possibly Ron could just answer if we take no action to approve it. Sounds like a no-brainer too, but what would be the result if no action is taken here?
Well, if there is a dispute between jurisdictions as to who is in charge of the road, then the Department of Transportation will make that determination and determine the allocation as well, the contribution,
Yeah.
if any. If the Department of Transportation makes that determination, there would be no contribution from the other entity. So that is a little different wrinkle here. We are recognizing that there will continue to be a contribution either from the city or the county. It's just capping it at 50% of the county's cost.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman.
can I give you an example, Ron? If the county, let's assume the county's cost is less, right? than the
It will
cities. So the county's cost is A. If the city were to redo the road, it'd be B, right? And they look like this, basically. So if it's half the county cost, it's half of A, right? But we're gonna build it still at C, and so they're just paying that much. I just wanna make sure I got the pie
Correct.
chart right in my head. Or
It
the
looks like a line.
line graph,
yeah.
right in my head. My bar graph, there you
Bar
go.
graph, yeah.
Right.
Is that right?
So let's use some real numbers. You got the county's cost would be A to do a county highway. The city's cost would be 10 times A to do a city street.
Mm-hmm.
The county's contribution would be half of A.
That's better math, even.
Yeah.
Like you're an algebra teacher at this
Yeah.
point. Good job.
So 5%, essentially, if the 10%.
But we're still going to build it to the city specifications.
Correct.
But if we were going to build it to the county specifications, we're just paying half of A, and they're
Correct.
and they're
And
the
it's
ones
their
responsible
maintenance
for
costs,
building
they're
it.
not their rebuilding cost, right?
Right. They're yeah, a highway, even a asphalted county highway is much cheaper than a city street.
One of the biggest hangups we had over the years on this is that if the county were to do half of our typical construction costs on a half mile segment, it gets prohibitive. That
Sure.
they could do 15 miles of something maintenance wise versus them allocating that much toward one segment, and that was a big hang up for them. And this treats them a little more favorably, and we will still be moving ahead with getting it done.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What about sidewalks / bike paths when this North Dakota gets redone? I've just heard so many requests that there's pedestrian safety is considered, and I know that we have a bike path plan that's monitored and managed by the Parks and Rec, and we have road plans that are monitored and managed by Public Works. Are they syncing up for this particular project so that that bike path is built at the same time as the road?
It will be built.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, Tiffany, what have you got?
when it comes to projects like this, will this save us time in the future, obviously, in determining, like, as we're annexing and determining where we might land this? And then is it less expensive for us to just start right from the beginning on the road versus having to, like, redo it, or is it around the same regardless? I just didn't know if we were to do the road before they did the road and then we have to, like, deconstruct and reconstruct. Does it matter? Like, is it cheaper for us to do it in the beginning, or like, is that something that this agreement could move us towards just doing it right in the first place if it looks like something we're probably going to be bringing in anyways?
Correct. So yeah, not having to make the improvements to especially considering the time frame that we're looking at, not having to make those improvements will definitely be a cost saver for us.
Did that answer your question, Tiffany? I think I was. So essentially, what we're trying to make happen is just to make sure that there's no, I guess, anticipated neglect of any roadways due to the fact that they'll be changing hands, and knowing that a rebuild would be unnecessary, so that there wouldn't be that duplication of efforts. So it'll be nice to have this thing rebuilt. There's no doubt about it. I'm hearing a lot about it as well. Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Ron, you were saying that this might be the first agreement of its type in the state. Any reason or insight you can give as to why no one else has done this?
I don't know why.
I can add to that.
Robin might be able to.
So the statute that was considered by the legislature in the 24 legislative session was actually brought here, I believe Senator Perry was the one that brought it on behalf of Brown County. So Aberdeen and Brown County have been talking about this for, months, if not years ahead of that legislation. So the bottom line is that we've had a lot of cussing and discussing that's taken place between us, and we've got a decent relationship, I believe, and we've figured out a way to make it work where everybody feels they're being treated fairly. And that's where the legislation really was set up to force the issue, because everybody's digging their heels in and nothing's getting done. So this kind of, by having a third party maybe arbitrate, so to speak. It kind of forces you into getting something done or making an agreement. So we've been talking about it longer, I think, than a lot of them have.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
And on West 8th Avenue, I know that the townships have a heck of a lot less money than counties even, and those guys have been expressing their concern about the increased road traffic on that city's road traffic as that housing development, I guess, progresses, and they're seeing construction vehicles and all that kind of stuff. So save us an additional discussion as it relates there, and give us a good template to be used to treat those guys fairly as well. All right, got our motion, got our second. Does anyone from the council have any other words, questions? This one could just be a voice vote.
Yep.
All right, so we've got our motion, got our second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Send that off to the county. They'll take a look at it tomorrow. Next, we've got our possible approval of a purchase of a 2026 International chassis and dump truck body from Crawford Trucks and Equipment using our Sourcewell contract. Stu, what can you tell us about this vehicle purchase?
Sure. So this is a new dump truck for our street department. It'll come equipped with the hydraulics to be able to install a plow on the front end of it to be used in snow removal. And it's coming in just a skosh under the budgeted amount of $165,000. So we recommend approval.
I bet it would also look good in a creek bed. Pulling silt on.
It would perform very well in that application.
Very good. Looking forward to seeing that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Lebo and a second, Councilman Johnson. Does anyone have any questions about this purchase? Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Fauberg.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Norvstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion carries. Next is the approval of a pay request for a traffic signal improvement. The amount is $144,294.39. It's paid to Ringenberg. Stu, what can you tell us about this traffic light?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is basically the signals at 3rd and Roosevelt. We put footings in last year and decided to wait until the weather improved a little bit to do the rest of the project. And now that school is out, the contractors decided that this will be the time to do it. I think they're planning on starting the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So we will probably experience a little bit of interruption to traffic there. We'll probably be blocking off 3rd Avenue from time to time while they're doing the work, but they plan to keep Roosevelt Street open the whole time. The stockpiled materials are basically all the controller and the signal heads and the poles and all that stuff they're here and on site. So we recommend approval of this pay request.
Move to approve.
Motion Ward, second Knobstrup. Any questions for Public Works Director Stu Nelson as it relates to this payment to Ringenberg? Okay, Jordan?
Councilmember Norvstrup.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Fauberg.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we will welcome Transportation Director Rich Krokel up. We've got, to begin with, a approval of 4 payments to Helms and Associates. Payment invoice number 25, $639 for the airport improvement project, runway rehab and lighting improvements. Invoice 17, $6,346.10 for the apron reconstruction. Invoice 2 for $53,481 for the terminal expansion project, as well as a final payment of $128,926.20 for airport terminal access road and parking lot as well, which would allow our city manager to authorize to sign all these pay estimates. Rich, can you walk us through what those payments entail?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor. At our airport board meeting Thursday before last week, We talked about all these, so invoice 25 is $639, and that is pretty much for paperwork and quarterly reports on the runway 1331 lighting project. Invoice 17 in the amount of $6,346.10. That is construction documents and construction oversight meetings and some drafting work for AIP Project 52, which is the General Aviation Apron Phase 2 construction. And that started a couple of weeks ago, and that's progressing really well. That funding is 90% federal, 5% state, 5% local. Invoice number 2 on AIP Project 55, which is the airport terminal expansion and reconstruction project. That design services are 80% complete, and we actually do the bid opening on that tomorrow. So we're kind of excited to see who's gonna throw their hat in the ring for that. This project is funded through Senate Bill 144 of 2024. And we were awarded $1.2 million for this. And then we got some AIP money at $800,000, and that'll put our local share at about $60,000 for that project. And then invoice number 1, this project is the airport terminal access road and the parking lot. And this one's got two project numbers on it. The 53 part is AIP, and the AIP or AIG is 54, and that's airport improvement grant. So it's, I mean, it's all coming out from DC anyhow. It's just a different bucket. So that invoice number 1 is $128,926.20, and then that's for design services. Finished up on that, and the funding allocation on that is 95% federal, 2.5 state, and 2.5 city. And that's all the D items.
I'll move to approve all 4 invoices, 1, 2, 17, and 25.
Second.
Motion Johnson, second Ward. Any questions? Jordan?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Fauberg.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Nordstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Shonman.
Aye, motion carries. Next, possible approval of the following for the airport improvement project, terminal access road and parking lot. Tentatively award the bid Schedule A and B to DAMI for $2.418 million, contingent upon receipt of FAA grant offers. Second part of this approval is to authorize the city manager to sign that grant offer electronically. State grant offer and necessary contract documents after review by our city's attorney. Rich,
Yep.
would you walk us through that?
So this tags on to the other one that I just talked about with Dami Construction. So this has got the two different project numbers, 2 different pots of money. And this would be for bid schedules A and B to Dami Construction. The amount is $2,418,344.23. And we opened bids on April 28th, and we had 3 local contractors, so that was pretty pleasing to see that, and they were all really close together. So everybody's math was pretty spot on. This is being funded at 95% federal, 2.5 state, and 2.5 city share. And Airport Board recommends approval.
I will move to approve both items to award the project and to sign the grant and documents.
Second.
Motion Johnson, second Ward. Any questions for Mr. Krokol? Jordan?
Councilmember Nordstrup.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion carries. Last one here for Rich. We've got a possible approval of a pay request to Foreman for $27,620 towards the purchase of a 12-and-2 bus and $28,727 towards an 8-and-3 bus. Rich, a couple of new buses.
Yep, these buses actually arrived this afternoon. Foreman dropped them off, and the 12+2, that bus, city share is $27,620, and the 8+3 is $28,727. And what the +2 and the +3 means is that's how many seats we can fold up, so we can put like 3 wheelchairs in one bus or two wheelchairs in the other. And then it'd be 7 passengers and a driver, or 11 passengers and a driver. So we're looking to be able to get the city manager to sign for the payment to Foreman, and that'd be $56,347. And this is being funded by 5310 grant, and DOT's covering $240,000 with the remaining to be paid by the city.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ward, second Councilman Johnson. Anything from the council before we take a vote on these?
Just
Go ahead,
one quick-
Councilman
Thank you,
Johnson.
Mayor. I was just wondering, Rich, what would be an odometer reading on a bus when we move it into retirement and add a new one like we're doing tonight?
Well, it doesn't necessarily go by the odometer. It's called a state of good repair, so there's a grading system. And then we check the buses monthly and go through this process. And then DOT actually sends an inspector up once a year to go through the buses and kind of just verify what we've found. Trust but verify. But then, we've got one van that's got 311,000 miles on it. So, and it still meets its good state of good repair. So, I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does, thank you. Will this add 2 buses to our existing fleet, or will we be retiring a
We're
couple?
retiring 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
can I ask Rich a question even though it's not about any of these things? Or is that not allowed?
I think it's probably allowed. Go ahead.
What's the update on how early you have to check in for flights now? I heard there's a new system that shuts everything down like 45 minutes ahead of time and you can't
Yeah.
check in possibly a second
Delta
late.
Corporate changed that so that at the ticket counter,
Yeah.
now the computers just shut off at 45 minutes prior to departure.
Whoa.
So
So if you're checking a bag, don't mess around.
don't mess around.
So there was one relatively high-profile incident as a result of that change. Has there been additional quabbles?
Not that I've heard.
Okay, that's good. That is
Thanks.
good. That one wasn't good, so, motion second in our court. We've got a voice vote next. Jordan, would you set the table for that, please? Yes. Yep.
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion carries. Thanks for joining us, Rich. Next, possible approval of an EDA grant application for infrastructure expenditures in the new industrial park. Robin, would you walk us through that? It looks as though it's to be presented by you.
So this is a project that was proposed by the Development Corporation, and the overall costs are roughly 5.8 million. This is a request for 2.8 million in EDA funding. We'll take what we can get. The reason why the city is a co-applicant is because the expectation by the EDA is that this will be owned and maintained by the city when it's all said and done. So while we do not have any direct contribution at this time for this project or expectation, there will be an expectation that if it's built using this federal funding, that we would be maintaining it and we would take it over when it's completed.
And you're talking about the roadway infrastructure and so forth.
Roadway, water, sewer, things of that nature, yes.
Thank you for that clarification. Would someone from the council care to make a motion?
I'll move it.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronayne, second Councilman Northrup. Any questions for this process? This is obviously abuts our first development on the west and on the east side of Roosevelt Street, undeveloped lot that we've driven by with for sale signs for quite a long time.
And in addition to that, this is part of the process that, or the area that we would be purchasing for our Public Works facility as well, so, from the Development Corporation.
All right, any questions from the council? All right, Jordan, would you give us a roll call?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ward,
Abstain?
Liebelt,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion carries. Next, possible approval of an application for the SWARMS funding for our wind project expenditures. $5 million up for the grabs. Hopefully, we'll get more of that, not less of that. Robin, what can you tell us about this application?
This is a process we go through every year. Last year, we did the exact same ask. We received $2 million, actually, when it went through their board and legislative approval. So we're asking for the same type of thing for this year, and the expectation, we would hope that as much as possible is given to us so that we can move ahead with the additional project in that Ipswich area. That will be the next part that will need attention, and that would pretty much complete the improvements needed on web system to remove the moratoriums and would provide the capacity that we would need to be able to get it to Aberdeen. So then we would only need to put in the piece from Mina to our connection point. So we've got two critical pieces. This would be the next one that would be needed. So we ask that I can sign the paperwork, and we'll see where the state goes with it from there.
Move to approve.
Motion Ward, second Northrup. Any discussion to be had by the council before we take a vote? This is going to be a voice vote.
Yep.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we've got a review and approval of our claims and payroll. Payroll period will be May 4th through the 17th. I would take a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion Liebelt, second Northrup. Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Ward,
Abstain?
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion carries. I have a city manager's report next. Robin, anything new and exciting going on?
Oh, boy, we've got a lot of exciting, all right. We have well, first of all, Mark Hoven wanted to say thank you for everybody that came to his farewell last week. 46 years in one department, that's pretty incredible. So congratulations, Mark. Secondly, there's been a lot of interest in becoming part of the library board and the Parks, Rec, and Forestry board. So we've had a number of applications come in, and they will be reviewed. We do have a position open on each of them, from what I understand. We did do we did a promotion for Luke Nelson to lieutenant in the fire department. So congratulations to Luke. We did do a 10-year certificate for Cameron Jarvis, who's in our solid waste division in Public Works. And Cameron, I remember coaching him in soccer when he was a little boy. So that really made me feel old the other day when we did that presentation. We also have just received notice that the WINS project will receive another $1.156 million of unexpended ARPA funding toward the project, the Spring Lake portion that we're going to be doing this summer. So we're in a position to be able to utilize that money so we can get it spent before the end of the year, which is very critical. So it's nice to have that project in a place where we can spend the money and put it to good use. And then I thought we'd talk just a little bit. Election time is on right now. We've got 2 city council seats open, and so Jordan, why don't you talk about the process that is just starting today?
Thank you, Robin. Today's the first day of absentee voting for the 2025 City Council election. This election will determine 2 city council seats, one in the Southwest District and one in the Southeast District. If you want to view a map of those districts, please go to our website. You can request your absentee ballot at, today through June 2nd at the Brown County Auditor's Office. They're open from 8 to 5. For additional info, please check out our website and follow along on our Facebook for notices up until Election Day.
Okay, and then Ken, if you would just go through what the signage requirements are, what's allowed and what's not.
Sure. We did have a ordinance amendment last year relating to campaign signs, but the ordinance has always permitted signs up to 6 square feet to be displayed on private property leading up to an election and shortly after. The main change last year was that signs can be installed 10 days prior to absentee voting starting and removed within 7 days after the election. So this year with this election, that would be May 9th to June 10th would be your days to display campaign signs up to 6 square feet in size.
Okay.
Marion. While we're talking about elections, I would like to remind the council again that there is the vacancy in the Southwest District. With the election, the municipal election coming up on June 3rd, this body will be canvassing on June 6th those election results. I would remind the council that if there appears to be a clear winner in the Southwest District, then the council could at that same meeting, provided we notice it, could also appoint then that winner to complete the vacant term of Councilman Reinbold, and then that person would begin their brand new term starting July 1st. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you, and thank you especially to Luke and Cameron for your dedicated service to the city. And we do have an executive session where we will be discussing some legal matters, so we will take a little bit of time to clear the room for the folks that don't need to be here for that, and we'll take a motion to enter executive session once we've thoroughly cleared the room.